expecting to play a higher level of hockey where they might not develop. And I know if they stayed and play U18 AA, the quality of coaching and development, staying home, would get them to the AAA level the next year.
Always remember the 4 C's, eh? You know, equal competition, you know, convenience, cost efficiency, and just run it with common sense. And Wally, I'm seeing more and more people who make that decision and regretting it because of what exactly you just said, the fight for ice time. And, you know, I see it all the time, you know, and you know, we're not going to resurrect it one way or another way because it is really difficult to get the communication or a parent to sometimes have the common sense to say, you know, my daughter or my son is just, let's have him develop at the age where he can have can play.
Yeah.
You got to play, Wally.
Yeah. Kerry, I'm going to ask you to tell a story I've heard many times. When you were coaching midget AAA, you had to convince a parent to let the kid play AA midget. And you did. And he went out in the NHL for quite a long time when he finally physically matured. But what was the player's name?
Jay Beagle.
Jay Beagle. Can you tell the story for the listeners? Because this is true in girls hockey. If they don't accelerate to the next level, they're upset. They move, they change, they travel, and the parents say they can afford it. But just share the Jay Beagle story because it is one that is so true when they're bringing 15-year-olds up in U18 hockey. And I know in your organization they did that last year with your son Riley, and they just didn't get a chance to develop. So the Jay Beagle story, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, Jay was a kid who was in the North Star program, and number one, Jay he was a little bit of a late bloomer, both maturity wise and size wise, and so he came to the North Stars in his first year, and he had grown up.
Oops, just lost him.
We lost you, Kerry. You're muted, Wally.
Okay, can you start over again?
Okay.
I accidentally muted. Sorry. Start from the beginning. Okay.
So the young guy I'm going to talk about is Jay Beagle, and so Jay he grew up playing in a minor hockey system with Mike Green, who was always a very mature, almost like a man child, and Ryan Stone, both very good hockey players. And so Jay grew up playing novice and Adam and Pee Wee with those kids, and they had very successful teams. When he got to Bantam AAA, Jay wasn't as big as everybody, and but still decent. But his work ethic was undauntingly. He just was a relentless worker. So he comes out to try with the North Star team, and I'm watching him, and it's his first year, and he's only, I shouldn't say only, but he's 5'9", and decent size, but not huge. And I just keep watching him, and
we keep going, Kerry. You're fading out on us.
Oh, so
you said watching him.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
And so he basically, I think he could have played on our team as a fourth liner. And to me, because the fourth liner gets to play a lot. My bigger concern was that in some of the things that he needed to get better at was, is puck control and dominating and scoring and being, knowing what it's like to be a top 10 scorer versus being a struggling player. And so I sat with him and his dad, and I explained to him, 2 different routes, and at the time, I released him, and I said, this is what you need to do, and which is just take this by the bull, and and go and play and score and be a part of the offense more so, because he was always a great penalty killer and always great all those sorts of things. So he did. He played midget AA in his first year as a 16-year-old, and I guess now he can play at 15, but he was 16, and so he ended up in the top 10 of scoring in midget AA. And I brought him up a couple times, and he played. Then the next year, at 17, he comes, and he grew a couple inches, so now he's about 5'11", with relentless work. He becomes our number 1 center on the team we won the national championship with, but he not only got the penalty kill till he was blue in the face, he got to be on the power play, and he actually is a kind of a more of an energy sort of player, getting the opportunity. I think he had 44 points in 36 games as a 17-year-old, and just was a tremendous guy on our team. At 18, and Jay goes and tries out for the Hitmen, and he gets cut, and so he went back and played for the Junior Royals at that time. He played 2 years there, and in that 2 years, he grew another couple inches and became 6'1". And so he garnered a U.S. scholarship up to Anchorage, and he went up there at, I think, 20 and 21. And now, all of a sudden, in those years, he grew to be 6'4". So very unusual, but it happened. So you have a relentless worker, good attitude, and he decides he doesn't really like the school part, and he says to his dad, can you find me a team? I wouldn't mind trying to play pro. So he's 6'4". He loves hockey, relentless worker, great listener. So his dad finds him, gets him a tryout in the Idaho Steelhawks in the East Coast League, and he walks on. And he makes the team. I think it was at 22, and they win the Kelly Cup. From there, the guys from Hershey recognized him, and they put him on their team the next 2 years, and they won the Calder Cup 2 years in a row. Whereupon, so now he's 24, 25, and that's when Washington signed him to his first contract, and he went on to win the Stanley Cup. So he's, here's a guy who kind of came through the system in Calgary, behind, a lot of players. Mike Green and him ended up winning a Stanley Cup together, ironically. Mike out of the Simons Valley neck of the woods. But I always use Jay as an example of, he persevered through a lot of it. He didn't grow until he was, a lot older. And he's the only guy in the history of hockey to win an Air Canada Cup, a Kelly Cup, 2 Calder Cups, and a Stanley Cup. And now he's a part of the IHA program. I think he's a part owner of it, and he's still involved in hockey. It'll be interesting to see how that affects his view and what he wants to do with the game. But he's got young kids coming through the system now, and that's the story of Jay Beagle. Where he playing where he can dominate and just get better at a certain, I call it confidence too.
Yeah.
Gaining the confidence to play at certain ages and enjoying it. And I think that's the biggest part of what the people don't realize is that struggling is not fun.
Yeah.
And it could be just one age bracket.
Yeah.
And personally, I learned a lot about it myself because, as you would know, my older brother was a guy who could play at any level, at any age. I was a lot different of a player. I was smaller, and I didn't play AAA my first year, even though I thought it was good enough. But that year taught me a lot in what I would call gaining confidence to play. And the AA league, and I've used it as a tail my whole life but I've also used it as from an experience standpoint to help educate people that dominating and being confident, at a young age is far better than struggling and not getting to play.
Yeah, I'd like to chip in here too.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, a guy I play hockey with all the time, Mike Schumi, he coached McCarr, and McCarr he played double A Bantam his first year, then triple A. Then he played minor midget, and then he played the triple A, then he went to Brooks. So he didn't jump right, first year when he's 15-year-old, he wasn't playing triple A midget. And it certainly didn't help him or hurt him because he may be the best D in the world.
Yeah. And, and there's another guy named Brian McCabe. He was another one that the organization actually wouldn't let him play AAA at 15, and he played, Bantam. He never did get the opportunity to play midget AAA because he just went straight to junior. But, it never hurts anybody to dominate and grow confidence, at the levels they should play at.
Kerry, and I wanted all of you, I wanted to bring the female into this. Tom, you had U15s there. I don't know if any of them have been guaranteed a spot on the AAA team, but I know on a few of the teams, some players have been committed to AAA teams. And if some of them weren't, they're the ones that aren't going to stay and play AA when it's best for them to stay and play AA because they're going to change, leave home, play for a prep school.
And so, how old are they, Wally? Like they 13, 14-year-old girls?
No,
They're 10.
They're turning 16.
No.
Now, these
So they're
girls,
turning 15.
yeah, turning 15. Go ahead, explain that, Tom. They're 15.
Well, they're the minor midget age.
Yeah.
But there is no minor midget in the girls. So, and there's a huge, unless you're really good, you shouldn't be in the AAA because the girls are a couple of years older than you, just like in the boys hockey, right, Kerry?
Yeah.
A grade 12 and a grade 10 is a big difference. I know my grandson was one of the only two in the Royals AAA his first year, and I wish he would have played the minor midget. And he had that bad thing; he just about had his bicep cut off by a skate. But
Well, it's interesting too.
better to be a star, I think.
That's one of the biggest factors that needs to be used as a tool. Like, I look at the Alberta Junior Hockey League or any junior league. Like, I look at the 17-year-olds and, should they be playing? And, what is the criteria for them to play? And it's the same criteria for that 15-year-old girl playing U18 as it is the 17-year-old playing junior. Why would you risk injury? And, I watched the Alberta Junior Hockey League, Drumheller's 17-year-old, hurt at Christmas, never finished the year. And actually, the DuPont, right, Wally? Is everyone know Landon DuPont or Mickey DuPont?
Oh, yes.
So his oldest son is a good hockey player, Nolan. And, he, as a 17-year-old, he was in Black Falls. And this year, he got hurt. And so he hasn't played very much. And, and I watched him in the Royals organization. He was always a decent player. But if you're going to, and I went through this with you, Wally, when I was 17 playing for you, it is physically tough to play against 19 and 20-year-olds. And unless you're a gorilla at 17, but even if you are, you're not as strong as those 19 and 20-year-olds. And the same thing goes, with the girls. Like to have a 3-year age bracket, I think the hockey world is, they weren't really thinking when they did that.
Well, they knocked out juvenile, right? So they created that big space. Because they're 3 years of
AAA, so
midget and 3 years of junior now.
yeah, but you really should only play 3 years or 2 years at any level. But
Yeah.
they created midget AAA so the kids could stay in high school, and the 16 and 17-year-olds would mix, right? And that was one of the ages of the juvenile, right? Because the juvenile used to be 17 and 18.
Yeah.
And, and then, but a 17-year-old versus a 20-year-old, even in juvenile versus junior B in the city, there's a huge difference, eh? But
Kerry, I just want to. You mentioned 17 to 20-year-olds or 21. Rick, do you have any young players on your team where there's physically quite a visible difference?
Yes.
Can you comment on that and your ability to manage them and bring them along so they don't get injured and they still do develop and gain confidence?
My hesitation tells you I probably don't have a ready answer for that, Wally. They survived as best they can. A lot of them, the ones that I had this year, were physically intimidated, so you had to ease them into it. We did a lot of stuff in practice to try and get them more comfortable with the physical aspect of the game and how to deal with it on both sides, how to take a check, how to protect themselves when they're being ridden out, things of that nature. But there's no easy way to get around it. You've got a 17-year-old that's 5'6" and 150, 60 pounds against a 20-year-old who's 6 foot whatever and over 200. I dealt with that all through my hockey playing because I'm one of the smaller guys. Again, it's for me, it's part of learning how committed are you to the game and how badly do you want to do this, which weeds out a lot of players along the way, not only on the physical side of things, but just on the work, on the commitment factor, on how much effort, how much energy they have to spend to become a quality hockey player and a recognized hockey player. If you want to put a tag on it as going to the NHL or at least playing pro hockey for a number of years. There's a lot of really skilled hockey players around that don't have very many of the other ingredients, and so they're playing beer league hockey now. And some lesser skilled players that have a lot of commitment and a lot of energy and a lot of willingness to put up with a lot of things physically and emotionally and sacrifice different aspects of their lives to fulfill that objective on their part. They're the ones that become successful. I've always tried to graduate the commitment factor as I work through the age levels with kids, Pee-wee through Bantam and midget, to make it increasingly more committed so that they would get a feel for what it was that they were aspiring to be. And from that, make an intelligent decision that they want to pursue this or they don't.
Kerry, can you expound on that?
Well, I think the harsh reality of it is, depending on, different organizations, different philosophies, and is anyone more right than the other? What I do know is that on the boys' side, 0.05% ever go on to make a paycheck, and they're going to go on no matter what. I think over the years, organizations and the governments of hockey have tried to find a vehicle for them to all grow, whatever level of ability you have. And it just seems that every time they try and make something better, going to midget AAA 16 and 17 was better, but then all of a sudden the 15-year-old who was a superstar, and there wasn't many of them. The rule was pretty simple. If you could play and play regularly and physically handle it, then you should play. And if you dominated, then you deserve to play. But now I see the rules and all this sort of stuff just keep sliding, and we're going backwards to 3 and 4 age brackets when it's not really necessary. There's plenty of hockey at every level, and and I'm speaking more so on the boys. I mean, the boys hockey has really become, oh boy, complex. And I just don't like seeing kids not have a good experience, and being injured is one of them. And if you're playing against guys that are 3 and 4 years older, you're more likely to get hurt, Rick. That's just how simple it is.
No question.
And it's not an easy thing, but I watched it. I watched it in the aging. I listen to the coaches. Well, if I don't get him at 17, he's not going to be around to be.
Yeah, it's similar to Rick's situation. He's got one that young that he'd like to keep him and come back next year and watch him grow in the program. But boy, he might have developed enough this year to make a team at a higher level. It's the risk you take, but it's a risk for the player starting too young to not develop. Kerry, back in the day when you were 17 and we won the national junior or the junior A championship provincials, how many 17-year-olds did we have on that team?
Well, and that was a pretty unusual group, Wally, because there was Mulvena, Hayes, Rocco, Giffen, Bowman, and Ross McGowan, Terry Knight, Rob Height. There was half the team that year was 17, and the other half was 20. And we had just a couple 18-year-olds and a couple. Well, I think Michelenko was the only 19-year-old, and Mansfield, they were 18.
Yeah.
Half the team was 20 and half the team was 17, and a sprinkling of 18 and 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
But that was an unusual, and back then, there wasn't a 20-year-old minimum or maximum.
Yeah.
That, we might have had eight or 10 20-year-olds, but, it's interesting because off of that, I don't know if you knew this, Wally, but, Roger Mulvena went on to be a captain in the Western Hockey League. Kent Hayes went on to be a captain in the Western Hockey League. Bob Giffen went on to a really good career at the Ottawa 76 or 67s. So, you're talking a group of 17-year-olds that were, pretty good.
Yeah.
And so, and it was a bit of a survival test at times, but because the 20-year-olds of that day and age and 19-year-olds, they were tough human beings. And physically strong, but yeah, there was a lot of 17-year-olds on that team. Now, and just to give you another little side, so when I was 20, the team we won the AJ with, there was only 3 20-year-olds. Jamie Bowman, Roger Mulvena, and myself. And we had a really young team. And we won. But, every year it can be a little different, and the kids are all different. But I do know that a lot of the younger kids that played the year when I was 20, injuries that happened to our 16 and 17-year-olds. That they had to, get through and kind of hindered them from. And midget AAA was only 16, 15, 16.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other big. All those guys, that played, we were graduated midgets by that stage.
Well, Tom.
When I played junior, I played like pre-Canucks, just like Phelpsy was called the Cowboys. And we were all 18, 19, 20. I remember Mike Christie was on the juvenile team, and I think they won some big championship that year. And he played a few games for us, and I kept thinking, why don't we have this guy playing on our team? Because he had a really good NHL career after that, eh? And but he got recruited. Randy Murray, or not Randy Murray, but anyway, Randy playing in Denver saw him playing juvenile and told the coach in Denver, "You got to bring this guy in." So sight unseen, he gave him a scholarship to Denver. Randy Ward, and
Yeah, that was probably Randy Ward.
yeah, it was Randy Ward. He played at Denver.
But I will tell you that 17-year-old year I played, I mean, I the physicality of the way I played, I was kind of held together with harnesses, and I got banged up as a 17-year-old, and it was relentless. Like it was, and I guess and I was a small guy. Like, well, I wasn't very big at 17, that's for sure.
Well, you were pretty tough. I'm going to share this story. It's a humorous one about Carrie. Carrie, I think her shoulder was dislocated, and you had sort of had to wear some kind of a brace.
Yeah, you could tie my shoulder in.
Yeah. But we went to Red Deer to play, their junior A team, and they had a tough guy. And you were sort of one of our more physical guys, but you dressed only to serve penalties. And their tough guy, he was at liberty, taking liberties with our players, just running them all over the place. And I remember you coming over to me and saying, let me go out there. Let me go out there. I said, no, you're just going to serve penalties. You've got a bad arm. And of course, we do get a penalty, and he has to serve it. It's a bench penalty. But when he came out, of course, what does he do? This guy's on the ice, and he sets two with him, and he didn't lose, but he managed to tie him up and stand up to him. And we turned the game around, and we did win that game. But that's the intangible of mental toughness, physical toughness, even at your young age. And I forgot about the shoulder injury and how it happened, but I know how you responded and recovered, and you never changed the way you played.